Let's see if we can use what we understand about transformations of functions to specifically transformations of graphs of exponential functions. So I'm going to start with the function f of x equals 2 to the x power, and I want to know what happens here. Describe the transformation to go from 2 to the x to 2 to the x plus 2, and from 2 to the x to 2 to the x plus 2, and so on. So first one. So what I want to do is I want to be able to rewrite this where I'm doing something to both the left and the right hand side so that 2 to the x is turning into 2 to the x plus 2. And notice that basically I'm just adding this 2 on the outside here. And that's exactly what I'm going to do to f of x. So if I take f of x and add 2 to it, that will be 2 to the x plus 2. And thinking back to our transformations, what does it mean to take a function and add 2 to it? Well, it's going to be a vertical shift. It's going to shift our graph 2 units up. Next example, h of x equals 2 to the x plus 2. Now, in this case, notice that my input is x, right? And my function says f of my input is equal to 2 to my input. Well, if my input is changing, notice in the last one, this part didn't change. This was still an x. But this time, this is changing to x plus 2. Well, the only way that I'm going to get that to happen is that I'm going to have to evaluate my function at x plus 2. So if I do f of x plus 2, that will give me 2 to the x plus 2 power. And now, what does this mean in terms of my transformations? If I start with f of x and I evaluate the function at f of x plus 2, remember that whenever you add or subtract stuff inside this grouping symbol here, or where my input is, it's a horizontal shift. And when it's f of x plus 2, you're actually going to shift this thing 2 places to the left. So this is a horizontal shift, 2 units to the left. Next, how did I get this negative in front of here? Well, let's just multiply the function by -1, right? Or put a negative in front. Negative f of x is the same thing as -2 to the x. So what's my transformation here? F of x to negative f of x. Well, with that negative in there, you should be thinking reflection. And with it being on the outside or here or in front, that is a reflection over the x-axis. One more example. This time, just like this problem, notice my input is changing. Instead of having an x right here for the exponent, I now have a negative x. And the way I'm going to make that change, the way I'm going to mess with f of x so that when I evaluate my function, I get 2 to the negative x, is I'm going to evaluate the function at f of negative x. And f of negative x is 2 to the negative x. So in this case, f of negative x, thinking back to your transformation stuff, that is a reflection over the y-axis.